Welcome to the City Current Show, powered by Higginbotham Insurance and Financial Services.
This show focuses on sharing good news and powering the good in our community. Now here's your host, City Current CEO, Jeremy Park.
Welcome to the City Current Show, powered by Higginbotham. I'm your host, Jeremy Park. We're always honored to bring you inspiring stories of individuals and organizations making a difference and powering the good. And in this case, we're talking about the power of healing and restorative justice. We're honored to have with us Travis Claybrooks. He's the CEO of Raphah Institute. How are you doing, Travis?
Jeremy, I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We have some good news to share with an expansion, and we have a lot of good to talk about with your efforts. But let's start with a little bit of background and what led you to launch Raphah Institute.
Yeah, so my background is in law enforcement. I was a police officer here in Davidson County, Nashville, Tennessee, almost 25 years ago now. I'm getting younger, I promise. And you know, with that experience, I had a chance to. I spent most of my time in inner city Nashville as a kind of patrol officer, and just had a chance to see the limitations of the criminal legal system and its ability or inability to really adequately respond to the actual root causes of crime and criminal behavior and how people were choosing to live their life. And so that really was a part of the root of my inspiration. You know, I would also add that, you know, I grew up in a Christian home from a Christian perspective. And I also was looking just for more meaning, a more meaningful way to live and express my own personal understanding of who Jesus is and Christianity and so forth. And so while Raphah Institute is not considered a Christian organization, I think it has underpinnings that are rooted in the Jesus story.
Define what Raphah means, because there's an element of healing and stitching that will lead us into what you do.
Yeah, so Raphah is a Hebrew verb that means to heal. And it's kind of the roots or the history of the word come from the textile industry in the Middle East. And if you imagine like a garment that's been torn or tattered or used a lot, you know, this word Raphah, where it's kind of a historical word, would be used to refer to how you would repair that garment. And it came to, you know, have a meaning in the social context, almost kind of metaphorically, like a person whose life has been torn, tattered, and needs an opportunity to be repaired or healed. And so it's taken on that meaning of healing.
And that's a perfect illustration to lead us into the magic of what you do. So talk about how really when you talk about conversations, hard conversations, that's a piece of this, the healing, the stitching, you know, there's so much to kind of unpack, but go ahead and give us an overview, and that will then lead us into the expansion side of what you're doing. But give us an idea of kind of the model on Raphah Institute.
Yeah. And we're still a fairly young organization, Jeremy, and probably maybe since the last time we talked, you know, there's been some evolution in terms of our own understanding of, okay, what are we doing and what is really driving it. We've always held that when people have the resources that they need to heal and thrive, they will. And we've seen our work as fundamentally helping people who don't have access to the key resources that they need to heal and thrive to help create access to those things. And our programs, our partnerships are really all about helping to create that access. It's about creating other new systems or new structures that give people access. You know, we think about that with our restorative justice work, for example, intersecting at the criminal legal system. People need more than what the criminal legal system can offer when either they're involved when they're in any way involved with harm or violence, whether you're the person who's been harmed or the person who has caused the harm, needing more than what the criminal legal system has to offer. And restorative justice is an example of offering more. We offer a process where people who have been harmed get to name the needs that they have, get to describe what they need to have those needs met. We invite people who've caused the harm to respond to that on a voluntary basis, to create a plan to say, here's how I want to make it right. I don't want to just say, I'm sorry. I actually want to do sorry. And according to what you told me, I think I can do that. And so that's an example of providing a resource to people so that they can heal, so that they can thrive, so that they can transform and become and have a better life.
And when you look at doing this with youth and adults, obviously those are difficult conversations to have really on both sides, for those who have caused the harm and those who have been harmed. And then to your point, trying to find, okay, what does that healing look like? Because in different ones, it can look different. And so
Exactly.
kind of paint that picture, give us an illustration. Obviously, you don't have to name
Sure.
names, but give us an illustration of, maybe one recently of going through that process.
Yeah, we had a case involving the loss of life, where a young person was responsible for taking the life of another person. And we spent, and we are, I mean, this is still, we're still involved with this case now 3 years later. But it was about opening up a space, first of all, inviting people to a process, acknowledging the harm that had happened, um, giving the surviving family members a space to really grieve and mourn and talk about the impact of the loss, to name their needs, to, and when I speak of this, I kind of speak of it in almost like in a very encapsulated sense, but I think it's valuable to understand that this is a very protracted experience. It happens over a long period of time, lots of meetings, lots of coming together, lots of undulating movements and moments in it. But the family members had a chance to unpack what this loss meant to them. They had a chance to unpack how they were processing it. They had a chance to unpack their grief and to process through the psychological torture that they have, and to name something of what would satisfy them. Certainly, to have it never have happened would be most satisfying. But given that is not a possible reality, then what? What else could happen? And taking the time to explore that. And with the young person who caused the harm and their family, exploring, how did I get to this moment? How did I arrive here? What's happening in my life that precipitated this moment, and how do we address those things so that this doesn't happen again? What does accountability look like? How do I gain the ability to account for this? What does it mean to be responsible for making this right? What are my own emotions and psychological challenges of processing through this myself? It is very harmful to cause harm. Sometimes we don't think about that. It is very harmful to cause harm. And that needs repairing as well. Need healing from that. Eventually, these parties came together after 18 months almost of separate conversations, came together, and they sat together in a 3.5 hour long conversation. They met, they talked, they cried, they learned about each other. They had never talked to each other. But here they were, bound by this tragic incident. And there was a lot of healing that happened in that moment. That's what they say. And then they came back a couple of weeks later and had another 2-hour conversation talking specifically about what the repair plan would look like, what they needed, and what restoration would look like for them. And we spent the subsequent time really working through that. Again, and you kind of began to touch on it, Jeremy, the beautiful part of this model, I think, is how customizable it is. When harm happens to a person, it's unique. And what they need in the aftermath of that harm is unique to them. And to have a process that is able to customize provide a customized process to respond to those needs is pretty amazing, which is very different from some of our other systems and structures. If you go through the criminal legal system, And listen, it may sound like I'm picking on the criminal legal system, and I am, but there are people who work in that system who are very honest people who work hard every day, who are doing their best, what they believe is their best to help. I get that, and I don't knock that. But you have just a law that's broken, and here's the punishment for that, and that's it. It's it. And that may not respond at all to what a person may actually need. Neither does it really hold a person accountable for what they did. It's impersonal. A punishment is impersonal. You just go sit in the cell or you go whatever, and you never have to even answer for what you actually did. And so this process allows for that. And I think that's a beautiful part. So whether we're talking about a home burglary or a homicide, it is customizable along that whole spectrum. And that's a really powerful, powerful thing.
I like that you point out the personal accountability versus the impersonal, just, you're sitting in the cell. And so while that is a punishment, the accountability at a personal level is very different, just like you're talking about. And it's also a balance, I think, too, of you're going very deep, whereas over on the other side, it's very shallow, but it's more of like, we got to get a lot of things accomplished in a quick amount of time. So it's overwhelming numbers over here versus you're taking a very deep personal approach, which takes time and a very customized, but obviously a very time intensive process. And so I think that's where, when you talk about kind of where we are with the state of, everything going on, you're going super deep, which is needed. They're trying, for over here efficiency. So very different balance points.
Interestingly, Jimmy, can I just respond to that very, very interestingly? The paradox in that is that in the criminal legal process, it isn't any shorter. I'll give you a common dynamic. If I'm a 16-year-old or it doesn't matter how old I am. If I'm arrested for murder, it's probably going to be 3 years before I ever see the courtroom. And if you were to ask me what was happening in that 3 years, if you were to ask the system people what is happening, the DA, defense attorneys, nothing. Not much. It's continuances. It's walking into court for 15 minutes and saying, I need this evidence, or I need that, or I need some motion responded to. And then it's back another 6 months later. It's coming back and asking another question of the court. And then it's another 4 months and coming back and asking another question of the court. Meanwhile, nothing's happening. Nothing is happening. And so meanwhile, you take a restorative justice process. And 3 years, listen, there is a lot. You talk about going deep. Absolutely. There's a lot happening. And so if we're going to take the same amount of time anyway to process this thing, let's make it meaningful. Let's actually be doing something. We talk to people who've been harmed, all the time. We hear, I don't know what's happening. I don't know what's happening with my court case. I haven't talked to a person, that 16-year-old, that person who's accused of committing the murder. I haven't talked to my attorney in 5 months. It's the day before court. This is the first time I'm talking to my attorney. So it is a very inefficient system. Very inefficient system.
Yeah, and I'm glad you bring that up, because I think that's part of that perception, right? The public thinking, oh, they're just churning through, trying to get all this. To your point, like, there's so much lag time in between. Like, that's where there's huge opportunity to go in and really be a solution. So yeah, no, I'm glad you pointed that out, because I think these are all important conversations, especially for the public to understand, because in many cases we don't. Like, we're seeing it from an outsider's perspective, but the reality of, like you're talking about, there's plenty of time to step in and really go deep and create transformation that's going to make our community better. And so carry that into the expansion, because now when you talk about working in Shelby County, that's a big part. So go ahead and dive into the expansion.
Yeah, we've had good success here in Davidson County, and Shelby County looked over and said, hey, let us get some of that. I think as you know, I think City Current is in Memphis, Shelby County, deeply rooted there. The challenges that are in that space. I think you also know the change in the political landscape, new district attorney, new juvenile court judge. And We had some regular citizens there who were like, you know what? Can you guys come and bring that restorative justice stuff there? And so we've spent the last almost 2 years now working, having conversations, doing lunch and learns, meeting with community leaders, meeting with system partners, meeting with the new DA, meeting with the juvenile court judge, met with the new mayor, meeting with the Chamber of Commerce, church, faith communities, all sorts, and really just talking about and planting the seeds of restorative justice philosophically. What is it? What are we talking about? And there's a lot of people here, they don't really know what it is. And then what can it mean for us as a community? You know, how can we engage this here in Shelby County? And we signed an MOU with those system partners last August. And we've now been working on hammering out the logistics of the process. You know, what does referral look like? What are the case types we're going to start with? How we're going to pilot this and kind of get the engine going. So it's really exciting. It's really cool. We're looking for funding. You know, that's our limiting reagent right now across the board. And when I say, you know, limiting reagent, I mean, we could be doing so much more in terms of the number of cases that we take if we had more funding. And this is not an ask. This is really a statement of the kind of reality of things. So yeah, but it's exciting. It's very, very exciting.
Talk about expansion in Davidson County, especially on the adult side.
Yeah, we are looking at expanding from, you know, currently we work in juvenile court, so that's up to through 17 years of age. We want to expand that up to, you know, 25, 26, maybe 30 years of old. And we kind of lean into the brain science space. You know, we recognize that the human brain really doesn't finish developing fully until about 25, 26 years old. And so we want to pilot expanding into the adult criminal legal system, working with those young adults. And in those cases, very excited working with Judge Khadijah Babb and a couple of other judges, both at the criminal court level and at the lower court level, and thinking about various spots and ways, and getting ready to have some conversations with the district attorney, Glenn Funk, about that as well. So very, very exciting work there as well.
Tie in early embrace.
Yeah. This is our newest initiative that really grew out of what we learned in our restorative justice process. We asked ourselves, what would it look like for us to work 10 years into the future? You know, we're currently working with a 13-year-old. What would it look like for us to work with? What would it have looked like for us to work with that 13-year-old when they were 3? Could we have changed their trajectory? Could we have helped them get on a different path? And that's what Early Embrace is about. Early Embrace is going into those very same communities that these young people are coming from, these resource deserts, and saying, how can we influence their early childhood education experience? And so in such a way that they don't end up in our restorative justice. We're trying to put our restorative justice program out of business by working far upstream. And so we are hitting several birds with one stone. Jeremy, I love this model. I love this concept. So what we're doing is we're going into public housing communities, recruiting and identifying women, and we actually have two men who have an interest in starting an early childhood education business out of their home. And we are investing in those individuals as a network. We provide education coaching to them. We provide entrepreneurial coaching to them. We provide licensure if they want to get licensed, coaching to them. We give them startup grant money to kind of help get their business going. We provide some income support to kind of help continue to get traction as they're, kind of trying to get their business going. And what this is doing is really hitting several spots. We are changing the economic calculus for a person who lives in public housing. They're now able to earn an income. Their social and psychological esteem is increasing because now they're a business owner. They're more than just a babysitter. They're a business owner. They are providing a critical resource to the community, to the neighborhood. They're providing high quality education. And so now the impact of that on the child is immensely transformative. And now that family, that you think about that parent who doesn't have childcare, who would go out and look for a job if they had dependable childcare, now they're able to go. And so this is a very synergistic model and opportunity that I'm really, really excited about.
So that ties in, and you've mentioned before, it's not an ask, it's a statement, but how can the community help your efforts?
Well, if you go to raphah.org and click the donate button, is how you can do it. And if your donation is too big for the donate button, call me, send me an email, travis@raphah.org. And we can take it from there. But seriously, as you know, nonprofits are different from for-profit models in that, we don't have a widget that we're selling and that we get cash. As soon as you take the widget, you give me the money. We're doing a work that really, this crude terms, that really, it's a story of transformation of a person, of a community. And then we take that and we curate that to someone who has a heart for that and says, hey, would you be willing to invest in this kind of transformation and continuing and expanding this kind of transformation? So it's a little circuitous, and so that's a little harder. It's a harder work in terms of revenue generation for a nonprofit. So we've got great stories. We've got great transformation experience. Look, we've got over 60 young people who've completed our restorative justice diversion program over the last 6 years. We have only 2 young people who have been convicted of a new charge. So, you talk about increasing public safety, you talk about changed lives. Over 90% of the people persons harmed who complete the process say that they are satisfied with the process, that they have a sense of healing, they have a sense of justice. With our Early Embrace initiative, we are poised in one community, in the Napier-Suticum community. We have across our 2 tiers of training so far, we have almost 50 women who are poised to open a childcare business if each one of those were keeping 5 children. That would be almost all of the young children in the Napier-Suticum community would have a place where they had dependable childcare, dependable early education. That's a significant impact, we think. And I think that's a worthy investment. It's a worthy investment. So absolutely, if there's, please reach out to me if you are interested in making a contribution. We look for small donors. We look for big donors. We look for $6 and 6-figure dollars. So donate, please.
Well, Raphah Institute, the website, raphah.org, RAPHAH. So RAPHAH.org. That makes it easy. So Travis, thank you for all you and your amazing team do. Thank you for coming on the show.
Jeremy, thank you so much. Thank you for powering the good. And it's great seeing you. Great catching up.
Higginbotham Insurance and Financial Services is proud to power the City Current Show. We're a people-first company that protects what matters most, the families, businesses, and trailblazers that keep our community going. As one of the nation's top independent insurance firms, Higginbotham is a single-source solution for business insurance, employee benefits, HR services, and personal insurance that's customized for you. We're here to serve you, the people you care about, and your community. Call 866-377-1959 or visit higginbotham.com.